I'm Tenitra Batiste. So back at the Benz, have to mean back in the win column, right?
I'm Aaron Freeman, and it's time for the Falcons to stop talking and actually start walking.
I'm Jarvis Davis. These mofos need to start running.
Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me, our Locked On Falcons host, Aaron Freeman, and Locked On analyst, Jarvis Davis. 11 Alive anchor Maria Martin is on special assignment and will be back with us next week. The Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So what do you mean? They're close. We'll discuss. And what does Brick need to do to ensure weeks 3 and 10 don't go on repeat? We'll debate it. Also, is it really time to decide if my BFF is no longer? We'll download on that. But first, are we at the point of a must win? So Jarvis, Raheem Morris hasn't been able to figure it out with the Falcons now on a 4-game losing streak. Meanwhile, Carolina Panthers are looking to reset after a surprising loss to the New Orleans Saints Sunday. That said, and with all that's been going on with the Falcons these last 4 weeks, is this a must-win game for this team?
1,000 million, trillion, cajillion, bajillion %. Yes, this is a must-win game. This team, Raheem Morris specifically, can't afford to have another loss against a divisional opponent. And also not just a regular divisional opponent, who you thought you were going to be better than a lot of people thought you were going to be better than coming into the season. And you're talking about getting swept by them. And they have a quarterback that we don't necessarily know or believe that he's going to be the franchise guy. Yeah, that type of stuff doesn't fly well, especially when you're talking about a fan base who is ready to. They got the pitchforks out. They got any and everybody that's up there. They ready to get rid of. And I think that coming into this game, the mindset has to be not thinking about all that stuff. I know I just laid it out. Pretty like doom and gloom, but he can't be thinking about that. He has to figure out how to fix it. Like he has to eat his words. How are you going to fix it? How are you going to get it right? How are you going to get a win of a game that you were supposed to win, so to speak? In these past couple of games, the past 2 games, you had the opportunity to win these games. You weren't able to get it done. Now it's must-win situation. Like you talk about playoff atmosphere. I don't even know if it's playoff atmosphere. It's like, hey, man, I am coaching for my job at this point.
Yeah, Jarvis, so many nuggets in what you just talked about, starting with the fact that, like you said, this is a divisional game. This is a game where you come into the season thinking, when we were talking about that second game against the Panthers, we'd be talking about a series sweep. We'd be talking about the Falcons putting one more notch in their belt as division leaders. But despite the fact that these teams have the same record, it's the Panthers that are in second place in the NFC South by virtue of a shutout of the Falcons in week 3. So on so many levels, yes, it does have must win written all over it. And then Aaron, you look at what happened after the Carolina game. Yes, great win against the Washington Commanders. Yes, great win against the Buffalo Bills. But then it's like the bottom fell out, because then you go to San Fran and you lose a very winnable game. Miami smokes you at home in a very, very questionable fashion. Tough loss to New England, very winnable. Tough loss to the Colts in overtime. And now we are here basically saying there's an 8-game stretch where you are pretty much, as Creative Vision said, Creative Vision, the rest of the season is a must win, but you got to start somewhere, and somewhere has to be Sunday.
Yeah. As Jarvis put it, like, this was a team, I remember going back to that week 3 game where it was like, okay, the Falcons, start off the season the way that they did. Carolina struggling. Are you better than this Panthers team that's struggling, and you'll sort of have a statement win. And Carolina went out there and had their statement win against the Atlanta Falcons. And so now you're the Falcons with all that sort of baggage that you laid out, going into this game, and you have to have a statement win. And it's not necessarily a statement where like you got to go out there and beat the Panthers 30-0, but you got to find a way to win a football game, which this team has struggled to do over the last month since that Bills game. And, Jarvis mentions how the expectations were that, this Falcon team was going to be competing with the Bucs for the division crown as opposed to, competing for second place with the Carolina Panthers. I always kind of question that vision because I remember doing the NFC South preview with the various other Locked On hosts around the NFC South. And we talked about in that episode how, yes, I think the Falcons were the best bet to potentially challenge the Bucs in the first place. But it did kind of feel like to me, given some of the concerns, the youth at the quarterback with the Falcons, Atlanta and Carolina are very similar teams in terms of some of the concerns that they had going into the season. And Carolina has managed to kind of overcome those concerns, get to a 5-5 record, have a chance to go above 500, I believe, for the first time this year and probably the first time in several years for that football team. So they're finding ways to figure it out. And meanwhile, the Falcons are struggling in the ways that they're struggling. And obviously you want to get this season back on track. But as Jarvis said, like, you got to take it one game at a time. And this is it, right? Like, this is kind of the Falcon season. If you can't win this game against this Carolina Panthers team, if you go down 0-3 in the division, if you get 5 consecutive losses going on in the season, including some very, very winnable games against this Carolina Panthers team and this Miami Dolphins team from a couple of weeks ago, and, being competitive against better football teams in the 49ers and Colts and Patriots, and you can't find ways to win, it's going to be a real struggle bus for the Falcons for the rest of the season. And as Jarvis said, the people are sharpening those pitchforks, they're pouring gasoline on those torches, and it's not going to be pretty for however long this regime is going to hang around in Atlanta this season.
Yeah, check that. Thank you, Aaron, because you're right. Carolina is at 5-5, and like Jarvis and you both said, like, these teams are, two teams that when you're coming into the season, you're leaning into the Falcons maybe being that team that could win the NFC South, that team that was going to be more of a competitor to the Bucs to finally kind of take away that crown that the Bucs have just kind of settled in on in the division here. But yeah, you look at the Panthers and you kind of always know that there's going to be that shaky loss like they had against the Saints. But they beat the Packers. They beat the Cowboys. They beat the Dolphins. So when you look at their schedule and you look at their record of wins, you think to yourself, Jarvis, this is not one of those cakewalks any more than it was a cakewalk in week 3 against the Panthers. The Falcons are still going to have to bring it. And that's going to have to start with Michael Penix Jr., who's going to be back under center at Mercedes-Benz for the first time since the Falcons were able to take down the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. But Jarvis, when you look at MPX and what he's produced of recent, what does he need to do to find that magic at home again?
Consistency. That is the thing that he needs to understand, because just going back and watching a little bit more film and just kind of seeing what works for him, when he's making good throws, he's on point. The feet are lining up where his eyes are and all that stuff. All those things are working in conjunction with how they're supposed to work when you have a young quarterback with a good arm that throws a nice deep ball. Like that ball to Drake London, that was a perfect ball. It was a moonshot. It was one of those moon balls. Almost looked like a Russell Wilson type ball. But, it dropped right where it needed to be, and Drake was just put his hands out, and it was there. And I think, like, figuring out what that feels like and doing it over and over again. And I feel like, I know a lot of people are in or out on Michael Penix, or they don't quite know, or they feel less about Michael Penix the way he's been playing in moments in these past month or so. But for me, I'm in a space where I think he needs to get to a familiar space. I think a familiar space is at Mercedes-Benz. I feel like the last time we saw him in there, That was against the Buffalo Bills. He did not play in that Dolphins game, and it showed. It was offensively, but I think he's primed for a comeback hot game, a consistent game, because like I just think back to that after that Panthers game, he was very accountable, very kind of like, yeah, we're gonna play better, and I feel like I'm getting those same vibes now, because one thing about Mike, I feel like he's a confident cat. He's a confident dude. He's not as demonstrative as some people would like him to be, but I feel like when he has bad outings, he acknowledges it. He kind of beats himself up a little bit too much. Raheem Morris kind of touched on that, and they had a conversation about that. But the thing that you look for when guys have bad outings or have bad games overall or average games overall is how they respond. And I think he's going to respond at Mercedes-Benz on Sunday.
Yeah. Be great if he responded to the tune of a 20 for 26, 313-yard, 2-touchdown game like we saw from him against the Commanders. But that being said, Aaron, when you look at MPX's body of work, a little bit underwhelming in this 4-game losing stretch, what does he need to do to get the magic back?
Yeah, I think you talk about this stretch of games where he's struggled, right? This has been a through line since Penix's ascension to the starting spot, where the player that he is at home is very, very good. You look at a lot of the underlying metrics and efficiency and whatnot. He's a borderline like top 5, top 10 quarterback if you just look at him at home and the production that he has as a passer in home games since making his starting debut last year against the Giants at home. And then when you look at his performance on the road, he's basically one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL based off of those same numbers, over that same stretch of time. You saw some progress from him against the Patriots. That Colts game last week was not particularly great. You saw some of the mechanical issues that, Jarvis is touching upon, where it led to a lot of misses in the game. And, that's something that he's going to have to work on if he's going to get to the level of consistency that Jarvis is talking about. But yeah, I think this game is all that to say. This game is a huge one for Michael Penix, because, we talk about some of the issues that young quarterbacks have. They typically, we saw this with Matt Ryan, are very good at home, not so good on the road. And you need Michael Penix to have that kind of bounce back game and show that resiliency and just have that kind of get right game at home against a familiar opponent, and kind of get that bad taste out of our mouths where his worst game was against the Carolina Panthers earlier this season, and show like, hey, I got this. We're going to get this thing back on track. And so I think definitely the possibility is there, but like we've been talking about that for 4 weeks with the Falcons. Like, everything is possible with the Falcons. You just got to go out there and do it. And so I would love to sit here and be very optimistic and confident. Like, yes, this is the week where they get back on track. The last time I did that was the Dolphins game, and they did not get back on track. And so I learned my lesson from that. And I'll basically say, I think they can do it. We'll just have to wait and see on Sunday if they actually, deliver. And that's kind of where it's like, it's done with the talking. You got to walk the walk instead of talk the talk. T, you're muted.
You're muted. Yeah.
Wow, I did a Jarvis there. So yeah, Jarvis, I thought you.
What? Just throw him under the bus.
Back the bus up on me. All right. My bad.
Jarvis, can you check the tires under the bus? And then just back that thing on up.
How you come back on the show just throwing me all up on the bus? You're supposed to be humble when you come back here.
I know, right? You're supposed to ease my way back in, right? Especially because you're doing me a solid. You guys helping me through with me and my voice being a little bit under the weather. But I was trying to say, Jarvis, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say that I think that, when you talk about, expectations and, where this team is currently, like at the current state, I think my expectations come into the season to now have changed. and I'm not upset about it, right? Because it could potentially happen, with a young quarterback who only coming into the season only had 3 starts. Oh, he's gonna have some struggles. Yeah, it happens. You just hope that the things the pieces that are around him will be able to help kind of curb that a little bit. You start the season with losing one of your best run blocker offensive linemen. Yep, that hurts. And then you had a guy that potentially could come back and make your offensive line better in an upgrade. He's down. He's on IR for the rest of the year in Storm Norton. So it's just the factors that are supposed to help your young quarterback aren't there. So you just kind of have to deal with what you deal with now. I think that right now, I think with the elements that are coming into this game, and I'm not like Aaron, I'll go back out on the limb and say that I expect Michael Penix to have a better game. I think he's going to be a little bit more consistent this game because he's at home, he's in a familiar space, and I think he's a guy that remembers what that felt like on the road in Carolina, and I think that he want to get a little get back.
Yeah, you're hoping that might be the motivation, not just for him, but for this team and this offense overall. Now, what do you mean with this whole thought of they're close? We'll take that under further review. Thank you for making the Falcons Squad Show your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. This episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. And the part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their trade master perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. So Aaron, Zac Robinson said in his press conference earlier in the week that this Falcons team is as close as any team he's been with. So let me start by asking you this. What do you think Z-Rob meant by the statement, as close as any team he's been with?
I'm going to assume that he means the togetherness of the football team, because if he's talking about them being close to winning some football games, I'm like, you coached in LA with the Rams. Like they were much closer at being a successful winning organization. But I think he talks about sort of the, going back to borrow a phrase from our buddy Dan Quinn, the brotherhood, right? The thing that, bonds the locker room together and all these various things. And like, again, going back to what I said at the top of the show, like it's all well and good to say it. Show me, right? If this team is as close as you say they are, then, now that their backs are against the wall, they've suffered a 4-game losing streak. We're talking about this Carolina game being a must win. Show me on Sunday that they are close. They are together. They will not lay down. They will rise up, as it were, and go out there and win a football game. And then, you do it again the following week against the New Orleans Saints. And then you do it the following week against the New York Jets. And then now we're talking Falcons 6-6 back at 500. With a shot to make a potential run in those final 5 games, whether that's to get to a winning record, whether that's to potentially catch up with a team like Tampa Bay for a division crown, or potentially, going on a run and maybe pushing for a wild card spot against one of these teams in the NFC West or elsewhere. Those are the kind of the things that I'm hoping to see from this team. And so when Zac Robinson says, hey, they're as close as any team, I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. show me, right? Again, you can do all this talking, but let's finally get to some walking.
Yeah, I agree with Aaron Jarvis. When I saw that question of Zac Robinson saying that this team is as close as any team he's been with, my immediate thought went to, were you not on that squad when the Rams went on their Super Bowl run back in 2021? Are you trying to tell me that this team is somewhere in the realm of close to that? Like, it was kind of that loose, open-ended statement that I just wanted to know, Jarvis, what's your interpretation of what Zac Robinson meant by close?
I think he's referring to winning football games.
Okay, I'll take that.
I have to disagree with Free. And here's why. Because these coaches, Raheem, Zac, sometimes I feel like they say certain things and they don't really have any like self-awareness. Like, do you realize what you're saying when you said they're as close? We're right on the verge. No, not when you 8 for 40 on third down the last few weeks. No, y'all ain't close, Jack. Y'all are going the opposite way, right? Especially on third down. On first and second down, you've been as far as being on third down, you're one of the worst teams in the league as far as down and distance on third down. Like, you put yourself in situations, whether it be penalties or, missed blocks or just bad plays, bad play calling, missed throws. It's just so many things that have been factors for you all that you put yourself in a bad situation. And I think that he's going to have to get out of that mindset of we're just trying to, do the right things and all. No, man, here's what's hurting us. Here's why we need to be able to make plays in these particular situations. Hey, Kyle, catch the ball, catch the ball. Hey, Mike, get the ball to Kyle. You know what I'm saying? He got a little speed. You can make him run under the rock. You know what I'm saying? Hey, Drake, as much as you've been balling out of this world, bro, if you just tap that doggone outside corner and just to give Bijan just a shot so he can do a little step back, you know what I'm saying? Get out the man way so he can miss it. So he can take off running. So for me, it's just that I feel like with those particular plays you just laid out, those are some of the things that I feel like are close, but he has to be in the mindset of correcting those things and not necessarily just letting them linger and thinking it's okay for those guys to miss those blocks or miss those particular plays, because you can't afford to do that, especially when you're in a situation where you have to pass the ball. Like, if this team isn't running the footballs with success, they have no answer. Oh yeah, come up with that answer. How about that? Come up with an answer for, hey, they're really stout against the run today. I need a backup plan. How can I, how can I hit it with an off-speed pitch? Can I hit it with an off-speed pitch? You know what I'm saying? Like, when fastball not working. So yeah, that's what it.
Yeah, and that's what I think, Jarvis, too. Like, what concerns me about that is, or what it made me think about was, okay, when we say definition of close, and sometimes you're doing it, sometimes you're saying it at the podium because it's a subliminal message that you want to give to your team, and it, like, encouragement, if you will, to say, yeah, guys, we're right there, just, keep at it. But on the same token, it makes you feel like, okay, but do you not see what's happening? We're the Falcons are in the midst of a 4-game losing streak. So it certainly doesn't appear that you're anywhere near close. So yeah, that one was kind of a tough one for me to walk through. But then, assuming your interpretation of it, Aaron, what has to happen offensively in order for this to be a true statement based on what you think Zac meant by close?
Yeah, I mean, Jarvis laid it out. You got to go out there and execute, right? You had some success running the football against the Colts, right? There was a large stretch of the game for the second and third quarter where basically every time you came out there, you ran the ball on first down and you threw the ball on second down. It was effective at times to get you in some of those, get to move the chains and avoid the third downs that really plague this team. But you got to be able to have that sort of balanced offense on early downs and get yourself into better down and distance. That was a contributing factor to some of their third down struggles and has been over the last month, which is too many third and longs. And unfortunately, like, this team is not built to be a let's drop back and air it out type of offense with the way that the offensive line has been playing as lately, with some of the injuries that they're dealing with up front, with Penix's inconsistency, and with, basically it's the Drake London show. If he's not getting the football, you can't really trust anybody else to go out there and make the plays in the passing game other than really Drake and Bijan. And so, like, they got to get to a point where they're just going out there and playing the brand of football that they claim that they have, right? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, getting out Atlanta, right? You be the physical football team, run the football, right? Win in the trenches, be the more physical football team, right? Execute the passing game and go out there. And it's going to take all 11 guys. There's not, one individual, that needs to step up and then all of a sudden all the problems are solved. Although, Darnell Mooney shows up, that would greatly help. Give Drake something, take a little bit of pressure off of Drake London, just catch the ball, Darnell. Like, that's all you got to do, my guy. But other than that, like, I think you're going to need to see this team get to a brand of offense that they're comfortable with. And that's really kind of been the problem with this team. They don't really have an identity. They want to claim an identity. They want to be a run first team, but it's like, what are they, right? Like, for most of the season, they were basically an even split between, 3 wide receiver sets and 2 tight end sets. Basically, since that Dolphins game, they've kind of scrapped the 2 tight end sets and they've tried to incorporate more 2 running back sets to offset that with Tyler Algier and Bijan on the football field. And that's fine, like, whatever you want to do. But so much of this offense, and we talked about it earlier this week and last week, which is on the squad shows, which is like, they're not cohesive. It's just kind of like they're just kind of throwing stuff at a wall and hoping something's going to stick. And like, we're at a point now, a year and a half in, we're more than halfway through the season. And the fact that there's no cohesion in this offense that you can sit there and say, I know the Falcons can do this well. Like, probably the one thing that you would point to is like, they can run outside zone, some stretch plays well. That's it. What else you got? Because if that's all you can hang your hat on, like, that ain't nothing, right? Like, yeah. That's Arthur Smith's offense. Like, what else are you bringing to the table? Like, we saw how limited that offense was. Like, what else are you bringing to the table? So it's going to take everybody in that room, including Zac Robinson, to figure that out. And the fact that they haven't figured that out at this point in time, to me, is very telling about where this team is and where we expect them to go.
Yeah, and I can want to kind of add to what you're saying as far as this offense not really having any cohesion. Basically, it's like, here's Zac Robinson looking at his play sheet, you know what I'm saying? Just dialing stuff up. And like, an example of that is that the play action out of the pistol, where it's kind of like Michael Penix turns his back to the offense and spins around, and kind of like, who's that fooling? What linebacker gonna fall for that fake? Because guess what? Have you ran the ball with success doing that in that same motion? And the answer to that question has been no. You haven't. So it's just like, if you've been jabbing, and then you come with your right cross, yeah, that should work, right? But you try to come with the right cross off the bat. Like, nobody's falling for that. So it's just, Zac has to get some type of flow to what he's trying to do. Like, first of all, you got to understand what you're trying to do. They say they want to run the football, but your defense gets a turnover in the last game, and then you pass the ball for 3 straight times, and they have to go right back on the field. Like, that's the type of stuff that just doesn't make sense. So when you talk about no cohesion with your play calling, and then just from a team standpoint, your defense out there making plays for you, give you opportunities to take control of a game, and you don't take advantage of that, there's a discord there as well. So it's just so many different. It's almost as if these 3 units, special teams, offense, defense, are operating in silos. Like, and they're just trying to figure out, like, hey man, y'all good over there? Oh, y'all figure it out over there. Oh, y'all about to make a play. Okay, we're gonna see if we're gonna try to do something over here. It's just a lot of stuff going on, and I feel like there's no one there to say, all right, guys, here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. And when you think about that, Aaron, it almost sounds like, who's the X factor? Like, who's the guy that says there's something that needs to be done and I'm going to do it? It could be a guy or it could be a group of players, but who for you is that X factor who needs to say, hey, I recognize that I need to step up and be that guy this coming week?
I'm an old cliche, I'm like, the games are won and lost in the trenches. And I'm like, I need the offensive line to kind of take control of this game. We know, historically speaking, when Derek Brown comes to town, it's always a struggle for this offensive line. And I need that struggle to end. And if this team, is going to build that cohesion and I think it's going to start up front for this team. I think they have the capability of doing it. We'll see if Matthew Bergeron is back this week. I thought Kyle Hinton did a solid job last week in the Colts game. I went back and watched the film this morning in the run game, and Kyle Hinton didn't show up that much in my notes of being like, oh, he missed this block, or oh, he failed this block. He was out there doing his job. And so I need all of these guys to kind of follow the Kyle Hinton blueprint and do your job. And if they can take care of business, and maybe that gives Zac Robinson the confidence to be like, okay, I can dial up whatever I want and hopefully start building that cohesion that has been sorely lacking in this offense for a year and a half.
Yeah, Jarvis, I would say the same. Like, for you, whether it's a group, whether it's a player, someone has to step up and say, I want to be that guy. I'm going to be that guy. Or, as Aaron said, a group of guys. Who's that this Sunday on offense?
I will go to a similar answer, but I'm going to call out one person in particular. I'm going to go with Chris Lindstrom, because the way for him to be able to come back and play last week, and I know he was gutting it out, and probably some regular guy, Joe Schmo offensive lineman, probably wouldn't have been back in that game, or wouldn't have been playing. But I feel like Chris is the guy that should. If he's going to have one of those games, one of those all-pro type games, this is going to have to be it, because, like you said, with the potential of going against Derek Brown and what he brings to the table, I know you're not going to be able to win every matchup, but I need him to win the majority of them, because that's why he's getting paid, right? So if I feel like if Chris can win his matchup a majority of the time, I feel like this offense is going to be in good shape.
Indeed. So what does Brick need to do to ensure weeks 3 and 10 don't go on repeat? We'll unpack that in Next Up.
This episode of the Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by BetterHelp. As days get shorter and the nights come earlier, it can start to feel a little heavier, especially when life is already packed with work, family, and everything else. This season, it's so important to reach out and check in with friends, family, or even yourself. It's the holidays, people. People don't like being lonely. Just like checking on a teammate or reconnecting with someone you haven't seen in a while can lift your spirits. Reaching out for therapy can make a real difference. BetterHelp makes the first step easier by connecting with you with a licensed therapy online from wherever you are. Over 5 million people have used BetterHelp, so a lot of people believe in it. You should believe as well. And with 30,000 therapists available, finding support really is just a few clicks away. So this month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it simple to take that first step. Listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon, because taking a step toward support might just leave you wondering, why didn't I do that sooner?
So, Jarvis, the Falcons defense is coming off a game where they gave up 323 yards on the ground against the Indianapolis Colts. So how does Jeff Ulbrich prevent this Panthers team from coming into the Benz and doing the same thing Sunday?
Oh gosh, guys are gonna have to get off blocks. That young crew that I called out a couple weeks ago, they're gonna have to come up again. Brandon Dorless, Rook, where are you, sir? Where have you been? I'm missing you. Like, and I'm it's kind of hard for me to say I miss you because if you never really been there, can I miss you? For all you listeners out there, I know maybe touching on some people who've been in some bad relationships, but hey, that's what it is. That's how I feel. I feel a little touched because the man has not been playing up to his draft status in the past few weeks. So for me, it has to be these young guys getting off blocks. David Onyemata gonna have to kind of ramp it up a little bit as well. Those guys are like that's the main aspect of it. Oh yeah, by the way, my favorite guy, who everybody knew who was my favorite guy, Carolina Panthers passed on him. Mr. Walker, sir, I need you to continue to do what you're doing. That's it, and just stay healthy. So yeah, but it starts in that interior part of the defensive line, and those guys gonna have to get after it because you can't let Rico Dowdle come in here and just run all over your soul. And I think Jeff is gonna have to continue to emphasize that for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, the good thing is, or maybe I can say the encouraging thing is, Aaron, is that at least in that game against the Panthers in week 3, albeit an aberration, or at least what we thought was an aberration back then, maybe one thing that can be encouraging is that Chuba Hubbard only rushed for 73 yards in that game, trying to find a little positive, trying to find something that can make you a little optimistic.
Why are you looking like that?
I'm nodding to you being like, yeah, you're trying to find some positive. Yeah. That's about it. That's about it.
And they only rushed for 110 yards. So maybe, just maybe, Brick has a little bit of the formula that can prevent the Panthers from doing what the Colts did last week and maybe kind of revert them back to what they did against the Falcons in week 3.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Look, you asked me, what does Brick have to do to prevent the Panthers from running all over the Falcons like every team has done this season? Divine intervention, because ain't nothing. They haven't been able to stop the run yet. Again, we're sitting here going like, oh, they only gave up 110 rushing yards in a game. As like, well, that's a positive, right? And so
this team is,
yeah, you're right.
It is.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And
crazy.
So, like, really, what this team needs is just basically to play with a lead and force the Panthers to abandon the run, because I don't see really any reason to be optimistic that this is going to be the week that the Falcons figure out their run defense. And we'll see. I would love to be wrong about that, but Jarvis mentions Ruka Roro. He was Quentin Nelson was like, "Hey, welcome to the NFL." I was doing a breakdown for the Locked On Falcons Insiders yesterday, and I was breaking down some film of Rook and some of these other young defensive players, and I'm like joking, like, "Hey, Quentin Nelson discovered a scientific discovery because he discovered teleportation because he was teleporting Rook 8 yards across the field as a run blocker." And again, not to pick on Rook, but like that's a challenge and for this team. And as Jarvis said, like, they're not getting off blocks, they're not making tackles, they're not being disciplined. They haven't really been at any point in the season. Again, I would love for it just to be like, hey, we just got to go out there and execute, and suddenly it clicks for them this week, but it hasn't clicked after 9 games. So I don't think it's going to click for this football team. So to me, their best run defense is a good offense. And so Jeff Ulbricht's solution is, hey, Mike, we need you to go out there and put 30 points up in the first half because we need the Carolina Panthers to abandon the run. That's the only way we're going to stop the run, is by them choosing not to run, because so far this season, when teams have chosen to run the football, it has been a good choice for the opposing team.
Yeah. So, Jarvis, that means somebody, just as we mentioned on offense, has to step up on defense and be that X factor, or it has to be a group, because what I'm hearing here from you guys as well is yeah, there may be a player to call out here, a player to call out there, but there may be a group on the defensive side of the ball that has disappeared that needs to reappear Sunday. So who for you is that, a player or coach?
I'm gonna have to go with the second level of this defense, these linebackers, this linebacker core. I feel like, with Josh Woods getting involved, I kind of like what I saw from him, just from a coverage standpoint. He at least reacts to what's going on the football field and not have cement on his feet and try to water the grass, when he's in coverage. So that's one of those things where I feel like the committee looked a little better than one particular person. I'm not going to say his name, and I'm not going to use the nickname that I used for him after the game. When he had his first start. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to go there. I'm in a place of zen. I just did a better help ad. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be better. In my life. So I feel like this linebacker core has an opportunity to make some plays because Bryce Young. Him not good. Don't make him look good. Don't allow this Panthers fan base to think that they have the guy of the future, because it seems like Panthers fans only care about beating the Falcons because they can lose 17 games in a row. But oh boy, they got to win against the Falcons. They're gonna be excited. They're gonna be all happy-go-lucky and everything in a place where most people are miserable on X. Like they are just so happy to engage at this moment. So don't allow Bryce Young to be that guy. So, hey, linebackers, if the guy tries to get outside of the pocket, he's not a scrambler, but he's had success scrambling against the Falcons, rushing touchdowns and all that good stuff. Yeah, it happened with him. So don't allow him to get outside that pocket. Come down, make the tackle, put him where he is, and put him on his back a few times because he will give the ball to you.
Indeed. And for you, Aaron, when you look at who should be that X factor, whether it's a particular player or whether it's a group, who needs to be the X factor on defense for this team to walk away with a W Sunday?
Yeah, I think AJ Terrell's going to be a big part of that. They didn't have him the last time. They kind of need him to deal with Teterow and McMillan. And if, I think Jarvis is right. Like if you can force the Panthers to throw the football, that's, and the problem with that is, as much as Jarvis says him not good in terms of Bryce Young, he looks pretty good against the Falcons these last couple of times he's played against them. He's become the new Jameis Winston of, he don't play particularly well against anybody else, but hey, when he gets to face the Atlanta Falcons, he looks like an all-pro. And so, I say make Bryce Young beat you, and that has not been a formula for success for the Atlanta Falcons the last couple of outings. But I do think that, you don't want Rico Dowdle to beat you like Jonathan Taylor did. And this pass defense is far better than this run defense. And so that helps the Falcons. And I think AJ Terrell is going to be a big part of that if he can keep Teterow and McMillan locked down. And, hopefully the rest of the supporting cast is not going to let Tommy Tremble and Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette and all these other guys, go out there and carve them up, hopefully, again. And so I think if you can neutralize Teterow and McMillan, that is a formula for success for this Falcons football team on defense. You just got to go out there and do the job, right?
You sound so confident, Free, that the Falcons are going to get this thing done, man.
Yeah, I mean, so confident.
That? Yeah.
So confident. Yes. Can you see it on my face? The confidence.
Yeah. Bro, it's oozing. Like it's oozing to your screen. Like you're giving me some by so the confidence that you're exuding right now.
Yes.
It's great.
This is where we are, good people. This is where we are. Even to the point where I'm having such pain, angst, and angina about the thought that Jarvis put forth that my BFF maybe should be, could be no longer. We'll talk about that in the look ahead.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Now, you, me, everyone, we make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right in those decisions can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, the NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. It's easy with Prize Picks. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 and up to 6 player stat projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. And the beautiful thing about Prize Picks, it's not you versus anybody, it's you versus the number. So we all can sit here and use the new stacks feature, which is a game changer, where you can pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Or if you're feeling great or maybe not feeling so great about Michael Penix's potential to bounce back, you can take more or less on his passing yards and touchdowns, as well as Bijan's rushing totals this week. So if you want to take advantage of this, go download the Prize Picks app today and then use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right.
Good to be right indeed. But when you're Raheem Morris, Aaron, you're thinking to yourself that you want to be on the right side of history this week, and that special teams may be a part of being on the right side. Raheem Morris said in his press conference earlier in the week that the issues the Falcons have been having on special teams can still be corrected. But what if they aren't? Could we or should we be having a conversation, God forbid, about Marquice Williams not being the special teams coordinator going forward?
Well, if you're talking about making a move in season, I don't know if we can really have that conversation. That's been an ongoing conversation with a lot of different coachings and assistants in terms of, do you have an alternative option in-house to turn to if you decide to move on? The Falcons were able to do that with Ike Hilliard because they had TJ Yates, who had spent 2 years coaching wide receivers here in Atlanta and was familiar with several of the players in that room. But outside of that, like when we talk about the offensive coordinator, we're like, who else has got experience calling plays here that you're going to turn to that's going to suddenly fix the offense? And then I'm like, who's got that special teams experience that if you're going to move on from Marquice Williams in season, because as you stated, T, and Raheem has stated, like the special teams is not, living up to the hype. I don't know if you have an alternative option. But that being said, in terms of, is Marquice Williams, coaching for his job beyond this year? I think certainly. And getting to Raheem's point, like, these issues are correctable because basically, going back to previous points when we were talking about other areas of the team, all these guys have to do is just do your job, right? Like that's like the Falcons invested a significant amount of resources this offseason in special teams player, proven special teams performance. People like Felipe Franks, people like Mike Ford, right? The kicking game we know has been a struggle bus, but like at the same time, just make the kicks. I know it's easier said than done. None of us can sit here and make field goals in an NFL game, but these are guys, whether we're talking about Younghoe Koo or Parker Roma or now Zane Gonzalez, these are all guys that are professionals. Just make the kicks. Bradley Pinion, very up and down. Like 1 week, Bradley Pinion plays well. The next week, he's shanking punts, right? You saw it in the Colts game, right? The first punt he had, great punt, pinned him down inside the 5. And then when the game is on the line, when you need to flip the field position, he shanks the punt. And there's been too many instances there, and we know Bradley Pinion is better than that. When we talk about the coverage units on the return game, we know that they have good coverage guys. We've seen good coverage this year from various players, Kadero Hodge, Mike Ford, Felipe Franks, D'Angelo Malone, who's now down, and whatnot. But a lot of these guys have proven special teams performance, and they're not doing their job, leading to opposing teams flipping the field. We talk about Jamal Agnew, very Pro Bowl return specialist. Has been beat up the last couple of years, have been beat up this season, not living up to his standard as a return specialist. So to me, it is simple. Guys just got to go out there and do the thing that we know you're capable of doing, that we've seen at various points this season you doing. And like, that's where I agree with Raheem, where these issues are correctable, but if they're not getting corrected, coaches are going to be the ones that ultimately are going to suffer the consequences when the players aren't performing on the field. And Marquice Williams is in that situation where he needs to go out there and prove, hey, I can get these guys to play good football. And, as we talked about throughout last season, that third phase of the game in special teams, which was too often a liability last year, it's been too often a liability this year. And if that trend continues, the Falcons are going to have no choice but to move on.
Yeah, Jarvis, Aaron makes a great point about the fact that while Marquice Williams can't go out and necessarily punt the ball for Bradley Pinion, he's got to get Bradley Pinion's mindset back in the right place to understand just how critical it is for you to be able to do the same thing you do in low pressure situations when you have a long punt of like 61 yards. That's the longest of the season for him, as you do when you shank it. Like, the mindset has to be the same, that all of those are critical. And Jarvis, and not just picking on Bradley Pinion because it's a special team challenge overall, but he's capable when he is tied for 5th in the league for punts inside the 20. So clearly, how to get it done. But on the same token, it's a head scratcher because on the flip side, just kind of like the helter-skelter of this team overall, when you look at his average for punts at 44 yards per punt, that's dead last in the league. So again, you're looking at a situation where if Marquice Williams can't get these guys right, yeah, maybe you don't really fire him at this point in the season, but definitely it just continues that conversation of whether or not he's your guy for going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, because you talk about the kicker situation. I know a lot of people want to put that on Raheem Morris, but I mean, shoot, the special teams coordinator is responsible for the special teams. And I even joked to Freeze probably a little disdain about how much influence Marquice Williams had on the final roster. Mike Ford and Felipe Franks have no business making your final roster. Sorry. Like, who makes your roster? For me, who makes your roster should contribute on one side of the ball, offense or defense. Special teams, I'm just saying, I'm not going to put a roster spot for two guys that are only going to contribute to this team on special teams. That's a wasted spot in my opinion. So when you have that type of juice, have that type of influence, hey, my special team is going to be one of those units that we can win every Sunday, and all you got to do is win offense or defense, and we're going to get a dub. Man, like, you got to do it. You have to go out there and execute. Now, like I said, he's not out there making tackles or taking on the wrong angle or letting the returner get break contain or whatever, but you're coaching it. You're coaching that. Like, that's what it is. If those guys are consistently doing that, which they've done in these past few weeks, that's what you're putting out there, or you're allowing it. Like, or hey, man, if that guy that you brought in to be on special teams isn't performing, changes got to be made. Somebody go, hey, man, I might need your rotational guy because my best guy, D'Angelo Malone, is done. He's on IR for the rest of the year. So it's just all those things kind of add up to, if you're not performing, if your unit isn't performing, you are the one that's going to be held responsible. And like Free said, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference now, but you better doggone try to make a difference yourself if you want to keep your job past this season.
Indeed. And Aaron, when you look at something that Jarvis just mentioned, the fact that we can't call out the last time that we saw all three phases complement one another. How do we get to a win Sunday? How does this play out Sunday?
Yeah, I feel like, and again, maybe I'm misremembering, it feels like that Bills game was the last time we said it was a complete game, right? And ever since then, it's been very, very incomplete, right? For this football team. And like, as we've discussed already, like, is it a coincidence that was the last, home game with, all of the players? Shout out to Kirk, doing his best to quell any talk of a quarterback controversy, being a great teammate there with his performance against the Miami Dolphins the last time the Falcons were at home. But, I think they got to get back to what they look like, in those 2 weeks against Washington, against the Bills this week. And hopefully, playing in a more friendly environment with their backs against the wall, we're talking special teams, and like they have the capabilities of the players, right? I know the general assumption amongst most people is just like, kind of piggybacking what Jarvis is saying, like, you build your team with offense in mind, defense in mind, and then you just send the leftovers to special teams, right? But playing special teams may not require as much skill as playing offense or defense, but there is a skill set that is required to perform in that regard. And as we're talking about it, like, the Falcons have invested, relatively speaking. Again, you don't look at these guys as like, oh, this is the Bijan Robinson of special teams, but they have guys that are kind of like that in terms of their special teams. So if you're underachieving, it's not because you lack the ability and lack the talent there on that side of the ball. So they got to play up to their level. It's the same conversation we're having on the offense when it comes to those guys going out there and performing to the level that we know that they are capable of. And the same thing with the defense, right? The defense has, for the most part, been, living up to the expectations. But at the same time, we're talking about them giving up 300 yards rushing and, letting guys like Alec Pierce and Tyler Warren, by no means scrubs, beat them, but like, you can't, you got to step up if you're going to play. And so I want to see that complete game to get to your point, T, where everybody, all three phases, and it's just going to take this team, and the quote unquote closeness that they have, and the brotherhood and the brothership and all these things that they need to have. And if we need to get some t-shirts out there that have the slogans to get this team's mindset right this week, they got to go out there and do it. But, again, we can talk about it, but at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words.
T, I think. Free, I think. Jarvis, I think. I don't know what I think. I don't know where I'm going with this, but let me start.
No, I understand, Jarvis. I do.
Yeah, this is
warrants what your answer is. What in the world do we expect?
T, you know what that was? Y'all know what that was? Y'all know what that was? That was a sequence of plays, and now we call them for punt team. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I made three statements, and now I'm calling out the punt team. That can't happen on Sunday, right? That can't happen. I need to see some cohesion on this offense. I need to see play calling that makes sense, that flows. Like, it goes with the flow of who you all want to be. And I need to see some execution from the quarterback, and I'm expecting that because he's done it before. I'm not wishing and hoping. I've seen him bounce back from really bad games. So that's my expectation. I need for it to start at the top, going in with the head coach. Hey guys, here's what we're faced with, and here's how we're going to get through this. We're gonna start by winning one game. That's all you gotta do. Just win one game. And once you win one game, hey, baby, you got the Saints, you know what I'm saying? Not to say you can take them lightly. Y'all can't take nobody lightly. Sorry. Like, it's the week before Thanksgiving, and y'all can be very thankful by getting your behinds kicked on the road in New Orleans. And we know what that's like. We've seen it too many times, too often. So, like, start by winning one game. And then just go from there. And I think that all the pitchforks that are being shined up and gasoline dripped cloths and stuff, and game plans being locked on Falcons, you know what I'm saying? Like, all that stuff will go away. I promise you, if you get this done this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, like we said, W's, they fix everything. And it's tough because we sit here week after week knowing what the team is capable of, and then at least week after week for the last 4 weeks, knowing what they were incapable of actually showing in the way of execution. So for me, I think that's all it is. Who you are or who you can be is great, but can you just please show us who you are on a consistent basis? And one more thing, and I think we've all said it in this segment about special teams, right? I feel like the defense, they're still going to be okay because they've been more okay more often than any other phase of this team for the duration of the season. On offense, the one thing that comes to mind, and I'm not saying that this is the number one thing, guys, just the one thing that came to mind off the top of my head was when I think consistency, I think go back to it. So when I think about games where Bijan Robinson gets only 9 carries because he got stuffed on the first 6, but maybe on carry 7 or 8, you saw a little something, stick with it until it actually starts to yield something for you, unless and until it truly, truly doesn't, then go to halftime and make some adjustments. Same thing with the passing game. Like, let's just find some things that actually work and then actually work them. I don't know, maybe the middle of the field for starters. But what I'm saying is this: let's see the Falcons on the offensive side of the ball truly show all of this talent that's been there. Let's actually see some execution from the offense, and let's see them figure out some things that work and stick with those. Or if things don't work right out of the gate, but you know that they can, don't abandon them before they contribute to this team's success. And then hopefully that means Jarvis, Aaron, and me are post-game Sunday talking about a win. Yeah. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcons Squad Show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen, and the Falcons Squad Show and Locked On Falcons are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We'll see you next time.